We know that this is an existential threat to us, and there are thousands of jobs in Canada at stake. Now, we've done the work. We are ready should the U.S. decide to launch their trade war. We will be ready. We are not looking for this. We're not seeking this. I've said it to you many, many times. There's a level of unpredictability and chaos that comes out of the Oval Office, and we will be dealing with it.
So tariffs are officially here, and I don't trust a word that Melanie Joly just said. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be taking a look at a few different clips, as within the past 12 to 24 hours a bit has changed. And I want to start off by showing you what Justin Trudeau thought would be a beneficial use of his time yesterday.
This morning, the Prime Minister was in the UK for a meeting with King Charles. Justin Trudeau went into his audience with the King, saying they would discuss what he called matters of interest to Canadians. And the CBC's Crystal Gumansing is with us from London, just outside of Buckingham Palace. Hey, Crystal, so tell us more about what we know happened in this meeting.
Well, Arthi, staff for King Charles here at Buckingham Palace did confirm the meeting, even sharing a few pictures on the King's social media page, posting them to X. From the appearance of those pictures, the two enjoyed a warm meeting at one point, even sharing a laugh before sitting down in Sandringham for that private session. Because these meetings are a private audience, we won't have an official readout from the palace detailing what was said. As I said, these are meant to be a moment for the two leaders to have a frank discussion. But because we did hear from Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau on Sunday while he was here for a security summit, we know what that main point of the conversation was going to be in that private session with the King.
We will discuss matters of importance to Canada and to Canadians, and I can tell you that nothing seems more important to Canadians right now than standing up for our sovereignty and our independence as a nation.
Of course, those taunts from U.S. President Donald Trump continuing really for several months now. It was back at the end of November that he first sort of floated the idea of Canada becoming a 51st state, and of course repeatedly calling the Prime Minister Governor Trudeau. And it's not just the president, members of his administration also using that line, really frustrating Canadians and the Prime Minister. Because of this meeting, it could signal a change. We could hear publicly at some point from the King, because it is protocol that he would not say anything until he had direction from Canadian leadership. So going forward, it's possible, Arthi, that we could hear the King state some sort of defense of Canada as a free and sovereign nation, and of course, as a member of the Commonwealth realm.
Now, this just could be me, but who the hell really cares what the King has to say? Or anybody from that family, the Duke, the Duchess, any of the royals. I get that we are still part of the British Commonwealth, but what benefit is it running over to the King to get some sort of cosign on that we are a sovereign nation? Do you think Trump really cares if the King says anything? And is that not why we have a Prime Minister to represent us Canadians and our country? Like him running over there and saying, hey, can you tell him that we are actually a sovereign nation? It's just pathetic. And this is what our Prime Minister, the lame duck Prime Minister that we have, is doing with his last, what is it, like 24, 25 days left in power? He's just flying around Europe, doing all these random meetings, pretending like he's still somewhat important, and then flying back here and just saying, oh yes, we will fight back with full power with retaliations. Like, this guy is completely useless, and he's just doing it on our tax dollars still. Oh boy. But on the note of the tariffs, we had a mixed reaction from a lot of different people, and Ford was one of them. And this guy, he's just going crazy, saying that he's going to be cutting off the power to the U.S. if things don't change. Just take a listen.
Well, let me ask you, you said a couple of things here I want to ask you about. First of all, you said that you will respond. Help me understand what you expect the Canadian Prime Minister might do, and what you yourself might do as the leader of a province there in Canada.
Well, we'll respond strongly, and we don't want to. On the critical minerals, I will stop shipments going into the U.S. for nickel. It will shut down manufacturing because 50% of the nickel you use is coming out of Ontario. I've ordered our bureaucrats to cut off tens of billions of dollars of contracts that we have with the U.S. We are the largest purchaser of alcohol in the world. We buy over 3,600 products from 35 states. I talked to the governor of Kentucky and Mitch McConnell. Don't touch our bourbon. I'm going after absolutely everything. And I don't want to. We keep the lights on to 1.5 million homes and manufacturing in New York, in Michigan, and in Minnesota. If he wants to destroy our economy and our families, I will shut down the electricity going down to the U.S. And I'm telling you, we will do it. It's unfortunate. I would rather ship you more electricity, ship you more critical minerals. I want to ship you more energy, more potash to keep your farmers going, and uranium that you use for your nuclear power. It comes through from Saskatchewan over to Ontario, and it's going to be a massive, massive problem.
Now, I find it very interesting that Ford was so unequivocal on that answer. He was saying, we will shut down the power, we will stop sending you uranium, potash, all this stuff that kind of keeps their economy going. But earlier in the day, when he was questioned about the Starlink contract, that like $100 million contract, he went on to say that he's not looking to start a tariff war.
And just to follow up with the Premier about the Starlink deal, why not cancel that right now? Given what the President, the display in the Oval Office, you've been a strong supporter of Ukraine. We know that that there's been a problem with Starlink in Ukraine. And Mr. Musk, why not send a message right now to the Ukrainian people and to people in Canada and say this deal is done? We're not doing business with this guy.
I'm not going to start a tariff war. I'm not going to be the one that pokes the line, per se. But I can assure you, he comes at us, he's going to get a rude awakening. We're unlike any other.
Now, it seems like a bit of mixed messaging here because he's not really willing to commit to ending a contract with Elon Musk and Starlink, but he is willing to commit to shutting off power to how many people? Doesn't really make much sense to me. But one individual who is gunning for Elon Musk was Chrystia Freeland. She was on Jen Psaki's show yesterday as well, talking about the 100% tariffs on Teslas and her grand plan to just target all the red states.
But Americans need to know that if you hit Canada, we will hit back, and we will be sure that our retaliation hurts.
You mentioned 100% tariffs on Teslas to hit Elon Musk. He owns a number of other companies. Obviously, there's Starlink. Would you ever consider canceling Canada's contracts with Starlink, for example?
Absolutely. And Canadian premiers have already said that they would do that. Totally absurd. Your grocery prices are going to go up because you know what you need to grow food in the United States? You need fertilizer. And 80% of it comes from Canada, and you're going to put a 25% tax on it? I mean, the Wall Street Journal is right. This is dumb. So really what I'm saying to you and to your viewers, Jen, is call the White House now. Say to the president, say to your congressmen, say to your senators, say to your governors, this is self-mutilation. This just doesn't make sense. There is no need to do this. But if you follow this path, it's going to hurt America.
Now, I'm not really for the tariffs. I do understand we need to do something, though, to hit Trump back in a sense. But Ian Lee, one of those business professors that we kind of see from time to time on CBC, CTV, he's been called into committee hearings at Parliament. He actually was responding to a question from a caller or a viewer on CBC. And this wasn't his question to be answered, but he chimed in. And this is what he actually had to say about the retaliatory tariffs.
The written document very, very carefully multiple times. I couldn't find any redeeming arguments to support retaliatory tariffs. They're going to be very destructive for us. And so putting tariffs on top of tariffs, and remember the Canadian tariffs will be on Canadians. So when the government says 100 billion or 200 billion, that's a tax on Canadians. And then the argument is that somehow going to cause Mr. Trump to change his mind. And, it's such a huge economy. We say these amounts are large. $100 billion is a big amount. Mm-hmm. The U.S. economy is somewhere between 25 and 30 trillion dollars, depending on how you measure GDP, without getting into the weeds. So, $100 billion on a 25 to 30 trillion dollar economy is like finding a loony on the sidewalk and thinking you've made it rich. It's statistically insignificant.
But again, Ian, do you think this is just an emotional thing as opposed to maybe the argument you're hearing from Premier Ford, which is that, okay, we're going to turn off the energy? I mean, would that be more effective?
As you can see, I think that retaliatory tariffs are very destructive to ourselves. I think I don't agree with the Premier when he said there's no other alternative. There's many other alternatives. Getting rid of interprovincial trade barriers, cutting off the electricity is certainly, shall we say, a much more draconian response. And I think it will have a greater impact because it is going to impact on the border states that import electricity. So yes, they will feel it much more so than the impact of Canadian tariffs on Canadian taxpayers.
Now, that's obviously a no-brainer. The states that are closest to Ontario, if Ford decides to go through with it, are going to be hit the hardest, feeling the no power. But something that Ian mentioned was interprovincial trade, something that we've been talking about for, the past few weeks as to why it hasn't been implemented, why we don't have greater interprovincial trading happening so that we're not so reliant on the U.S. Why is this still such a problem for us? Well, if you listen to Mary Ng, who actually was on the CBC yesterday, she would like to let you know that this is something that they've been striving for the past 10 years. They're right on track. They're about to be reaping the fruits of their labors, essentially, and that they've always planned for this.
But at the same time, what I have been doing as the trade minister is doing what we have been doing for the last 10 years, which is to create a trade infrastructure all around the world that gives Canadian businesses opportunities and options for diversification into those markets.
You know what would have helped with that trade infrastructure that's supposed to reach all across the world? Pipelines. And this expert that was on CBC as well yesterday rebuts what she just said about the past 10 years in regards to that. Just take a look at this.
Knowing what you know about pipelines and the energy industry, what about this being the thing that motivates Canada to move that oil via pipeline elsewhere rather than to the United States?
But one of the great tragedies of the last 10 years is that the pipelines that could have been in place today, particularly Northern Gateway, were not put in place. So I'll just close by saying it will be very hard to put in place that kind of infrastructure in any meaningful timeline to be helpful in this dispute.
Now, that is the unfortunate truth, that these pipelines and these projects take a long time. And we might not see this pipeline within Pierre's 4-year mandate. He could potentially win another 4-year mandate, but at that point, who knows? But when you listen to Mary continue talking, she mentions that since 2018, they've been trying to increase this trade outside of the exports outside of the U.S., and they said that they're finally going to hit their target 7 years later by 2025, this year. Take a listen.
And I've just returned from Australia and Singapore with hundreds of businesses that are looking into those markets to grow in addition to their positions in the United States. And I think that that is another option that Canadians really are looking to do today, probably more closely than they've ever looked at before. But I want to perhaps say to Canadians that, in 2018, when we set out a goal to increase our exports to markets that are not the United States. So yes, to the Indo-Pacific and to Asia, but also to the European markets. We are on track to exceed the targets that we set out in 2018. We will exceed the target of increasing our exports beyond the United States by 50% by 2025. And I think from the tenor of the companies that I am, working with day in and day out, that they are looking at, of course, our trading partner with the United States, is incredibly important. And we're going to continue to work to make sure that we have access to that market. But I think that the opportunities to work with others as well, like the Europeans, like those in the Asia Pacific and the Indo-Pacific, are just as important. And today, 10 years later, we have free trade agreements to over 65% of the world's economy. That's trade infrastructure that hasn't been there before. And I think today, as I say to companies, we've built those bridges, and we will support them as they cross that bridge into those markets.
Okay. So she rattles off all those numbers. We're going to hit the target by 2025. 65%. We've already built these bridges. We'll support them, yada, yada. Yet we are still in this position where the tariffs are going to destroy our economy. We're going to hit a recession. The auto industry most likely will be done in a week, is what they were claiming. Our economy is not in a great position, but if you listen to Mary Ng, we've done so much to diversify ourselves and bolster outside of the U.S. that we're going to be fine. This is how ridiculous the liberals are. Now, David asked her a question about Trump and Trudeau, if they've been in talks, if they've communicated at all. And Mary just completely avoids the question, dodges it, doesn't give any concrete answer on whether Trudeau has reached out or if he's been in contact with Trump. She just starts talking about their willingness to talk.
Okay, so in the time we have left, I was reaching out to the Prime Minister's office earlier today, trying to find out if there's going to be a conversation with the President or where things might be on that front. Do you have any update on that? Do we know if Justin Trudeau and Donald Trump will speak today, or if the Prime Minister will speak with Claudia Sheinbaum of Mexico? Where are things on that front?
Well, we're working at all channels with our American partners, and of course with Mexico as well.
It's like, what a response. But in all honesty, I think it's better that Trudeau and Trump are not talking, because Trudeau will just make it even worse, I feel like, at this point. But Mary does this again when she's asked about the fentanyl, the border situation. She says that we need to continue talking to our counterparts. But then listen to what she says at the end of this statement.
Well, we have to keep talking to our American friends, and I'm glad that you raised the statistic of what actually gets into the United States via Canada and the significant reduction. Look, we also care about this issue as much as the Americans do. Fentanyl is not something we want in this country nor in America.
Did you hear that, guys? Fentanyl is not something that they want in this country, but they were just paying to give it to people for free months ago, which was getting diverted and sold to illegally to other people. Kids were getting their hands on it. Kids were using it. Kids were perishing. Like, how can she sit there and say that fentanyl is not something that they want in Canada, yet they were literally paying so that they could give it to people for free? These people with addictions. It just blows my mind how these liberals continue to lie. And Carney's learning very well from these guys, which is something that they admitted to on this panel on CTV with Vashi. The lady from the previous video, Laura Stone, who works for the Globe and Mail, who was grilling Carney at his event, she actually says this, saying like he's learning from Anita Anand and the other liberal members that he's there with on how to talk to the media, how to lie. Take a look.
Okay, very quick. I have like 4 minutes. I want to do one round on the Liberal leadership race, because this is the last time we meet before there is an actual leader. Laura, I'll start with you. You were grilling Mark Carney Friday night when he was at that event in Oakville about the way in which he represented himself after the debate, how much of a role he played in the decision of a big company, Brookfield Asset Management, to move its headquarters from Canada to the United States. He admitted to you he should have been more precise. Is this having any impact on his campaign, do you think?
And I wouldn't have wanted to be anywhere else on Friday night, Vashi, I'll tell you. I think, look, I think that, you know, the issue here isn't specifically on Brookfield, although there are people obviously in the business community, conservatives are very invested in that issue. And I think, you know, he owes the public a straight answer on it. And we didn't get that on Friday. We got a lot of deflection and kind of turning away in technical language, but we didn't quite hear what he had to say specifically on that point. I think kind of the issue is here that Mr. Carney doesn't feel like he owes the public an explanation. He doesn't feel like he owes clarity on things that he doesn't want to talk about. He wants to frame things in a certain way and push forward his campaign. And I'll say, I watched his preamble speech with Anita Anand there, and he has gotten quite skilled at speaking in public, speaking to supporters, kind of building up his new kind of slogan, I suppose, although he doesn't like the word slogan, but about building in Canada. And he's kind of got the electioneering down pat. I think kind of just on the accountability piece, I think that this will be an issue for him, particularly not so much in the Liberal leadership race, but as we transition to a general election, when he will have to face the public and the media, and he'll be put in the hot seat and have to be accountable for his policy decisions and choices.
And that's something I can't wait for. When he goes toe-to-toe with the other leaders, they start calling him out on everything from what he's trying to hide, not hide, his past, his future, his present, everything. But as always, love to hear from you guys. Let me know what you think about all this in the comment section below, and I will catch you guys on the next one. Thanks so much.